My name is Diane Brennan and I'm 33 years old. 5 days before my sister's wedding, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother that would change everything. You're uninvited. Your sister is marrying into old money, and we won't have your drama embarrassing us. I read it 3 times, sitting alone in my apartment kitchen, the coffee going cold in my hands. No explanation beyond that. No softening. Just a clean, surgical cut from the family I had spent my whole life trying to belong to. I wasn't shocked that my mother could say something so cruel. I was shocked at how casually she said it, like she was canceling a dinner reservation instead of erasing her own daughter from her sister's wedding. Renee and I had never been close, not really, but we were sisters. We'd shared a bedroom until I was 12. We'd cried together when our father left. And now, because Renee had found herself a fiancé with a family name attached to 3 golf courses and a shipping company, I had become an inconvenience. A stain that might show up on the guest list and remind everyone that the Brennans weren't always old money. We weren't old anything. We were a single mother and 2 daughters clawing our way through late rent and layaway Christmases. I typed out a response, deleted it, typed another. Nothing felt right. Anger wanted to come out as begging, and begging wanted to come out as anger, and neither one felt like something I could send to a woman who had just told me my presence was drama. So instead, I just sat there, staring at the screen, waiting for the next message, because I knew my mother. She never delivered bad news without following it with something meant to twist the knife a little deeper. Sure enough, less than a minute later, another text came through. No words this time. Just a photo. Their engagement picture, professionally shot, the kind you pay a photographer $300 an hour for so the lighting hits just right. Renee was glowing in a champagne-colored dress, her hair swept over one shoulder, laughing at something just outside the frame. And beside her, his arm wrapped around her waist, stood the groom. I looked at his face for exactly 3 seconds before something in my chest went cold, then hot, then cracked wide open into the kind of laughter that doesn't come from humor. It comes from disbelief so total that your body doesn't know what else to do with it. I laughed until my ribs hurt, until my eyes watered, until I had to set my phone down on the counter because my hands were shaking too hard to hold it steady. Because I knew that face. I had known that face for 4 years, long before Renee had ever met him at whatever charity gala or golf clubhouse she claimed had brought them together. I knew the small scar above his left eyebrow. I knew the way his smile never quite reached his eyes in photos, like he was always calculating something just behind them. I knew, because his name wasn't the name printed so proudly on the wedding website my mother had shared weeks earlier. The name in that photo caption was Weston Cole, heir to Cole Maritime Holdings. But the man in that picture, the man my sister was marrying in 5 days, had another name entirely. A name from a different life. A name tied to a version of him that my family had absolutely no idea existed. My mind raced backward through years of memory, trying to piece together how this was even possible, how the same man could stand in 2 completely different worlds without either side ever colliding. I thought about the last time I had seen him, the circumstances so far removed from champagne toasts and old money weddings that the 2 images refused to sit together in my head. I thought about what my mother would say if she knew. I thought about what Renee would do if she found out 5 days before walking down an aisle toward a man who was not who he claimed to be. I set the phone down again, pressed my palms flat against the cold kitchen counter, and forced myself to breathe. Getting uninvited from the wedding suddenly felt like the smallest problem in the room. My mother thought she was protecting the family name by cutting me out. She had no idea that the real threat to that name was already inside the house, wearing a $3,000 suit and smiling for engagement photos, waiting for a wedding day that was about to become something none of them could have imagined. I picked my phone back up, opened my contacts, and found the one number I hadn't dialed in over a year. My thumb hovered over the call button. Once I made this call, there would be no quiet way back from what was coming. But some doors, once you see what's behind them, cannot be closed again. I took one more breath and I pressed call because 5 days was not very much time, and there was a wedding my family needed to understand a lot more clearly before it happened. The call connected on the 3rd ring, and a familiar voice answered, cautious, like he already sensed this wasn't a friendly catch-up. His name was Grant Holloway, a private investigator I had hired 2 years earlier during a messy dispute with a former landlord, and the one person I knew who could pull a real background on someone faster than any of us could Google our way through it. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I told him I needed everything he could find on a man named Weston Cole, and then, my voice shaking slightly, I told him why. Grant went quiet for a moment before saying the words that confirmed the cold feeling already settled in my stomach. He recognized the description immediately, because the man photographed beside my sister wasn't named Weston Cole at all. His real name was Julian Ferris, and 2 years earlier, Julian had been under investigation for running an investment scheme that had drained retirement accounts from at least 6 families before slipping out of state and vanishing from every database that mattered. I sat with that information for a long time after we hung up, staring at the ceiling of my apartment as the pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Julian hadn't married into old money. He had built an entire identity around it, complete with a fabricated family name, a manufactured maritime holding company website that Grant confirmed had been registered only 8 months earlier, and a trail of half-truths sturdy enough to fool a woman desperate to prove she had climbed higher than where she started. Renee wasn't marrying wealth. She was marrying a con, and in 5 days, she was going to stand in front of 200 guests and hand her entire life over to a man who had already done this to other families and walked away clean. The hardest part wasn't discovering the truth. The hardest part was deciding what to do with it, knowing my mother's text was still sitting unanswered on my phone, knowing that the moment I opened my mouth about this, she would assume it was jealousy, revenge, drama dressed up as concern. So I did the only thing that felt right. I didn't call her. I didn't call Renee either. Instead, I gathered everything Grant had found, the financial records, the fabricated documents, the photographs of Julian using a different name at a courthouse appearance 18 months earlier, and I drove to my sister's apartment myself, because some truths cannot be delivered through a screen. Renee opened the door already annoyed, arms crossed, clearly expecting an argument about the wedding invitation. Instead, I handed her a folder and asked her to sit down before she looked inside. I watched her face change page by page, the confusion sliding into disbelief, the disbelief hardening into something closer to grief. She kept saying it couldn't be true, that she had met his parents, that she had seen the company office, that this had to be some kind of mistake or a trick from a jealous sister who had just been cut from the guest list. But documents don't lie the way people do, and by the 3rd page, her hands had started trembling the same way mine had over the kitchen counter. She called our mother that same night, and for the first time in years, I heard my mother's voice crack with something other than pride or control. There was no wedding 5 days later. Instead, there was a quiet, painful unraveling, a canceled venue, a furious phone call to a security firm, and eventually, a police report that connected Julian Ferris to 2 more victims in another state who had reached out after his name resurfaced. My mother never apologized for the text message. Some people never do. But she did call me, 3 days after everything fell apart, her voice smaller than I had ever heard it, asking me to come over, asking me to help her figure out what to do next. And I went, not because the wound from that text had healed, but because family, even a messy and imperfect one, still means showing up when it actually matters. Renee thanked me only once, quietly, months later, over coffee neither of us finished, telling me that if I hadn't laughed at that photo instead of simply feeling hurt, she might never have questioned anything at all. That laugh, born out of shock and disbelief, ended up being the only warning sign strong enough to stop a disaster already 5 days from happening. My mother's old money wedding never took place, and the family she had tried so hard to protect from embarrassment ended up needing the very daughter she had tried to erase. If this story hit you the way it hit me living through it, that feeling of being underestimated right before you become the one who saves everyone, then you already know exactly why stories like this matter.